Beautiful job. And now let's set up our cart buttons component. So I'm gonna navigate back, of course, to let's see. We have card buttons JS. And in here, of course, I have my component. Again, I have quite a few imports. So in here, I'm looking for three icons. I have shopping cart, I have user minus and user plus. Because remember, when we log in, of course, we'll change these values. So let me quickly do it so you don't think that I'm just making this up. So I'm going to go with sign in with Google. I think that's going to be the quickest one. And there it is. The moment I logged in, I have logout as far as the value, different icon. And like I previously mentioned, also the checkout right now is displayed. So that should do it for the icons. Then I have the link because this cart one is actually a link. So this one will be eventually set up as a button that will communicate to Auth0. Now this is just going to be a link that navigates to the cart page. But of course, I'll also want to display, well, how many items I have in here. Notice I have the cart icon and then I have this little value, which at the moment will hard code, but that's why I have imported from the cart context over here, like so. That's why I have imported this cart context because I'll use that value. And I think we can start working on it. And one more thing that I would want to mention about the styled components. Notice, of course, we have the wrapper, but this is going to be the case where I'll also add a class on this div, essentially on this wrapper. And I'll show you in a second why. So I'm going to go to class name, and class name is very important. So we're going to go with cart, btn, and wrapper. And if you take a look at the CSS over here, there's no place where I'm utilizing. So you might be wondering, well, why we're adding that? And there's two use cases. First of all, there's a use case for the global classes. There's going to be some global classes that you would want to add. And the second use case, notice here in the nav bar. So in the nav bar, like I said, once we get to the big screen, I would want to showcase the links as well as the cart buttons. But the moment we save, notice how we don't see these cart buttons. Why? Well, if we come here to the CSS, keep on scrolling, and then check it out. Cart button wrapper display grid. So once we get to that 992, only then I would want to display them. And before that, I hide them by default. So they're hidden, the same as links. And in order to do that, I had to add that class over here. So technically, this class I'm not using in this CSS, but in the previous one, I am. So again, two use cases. Either you have some kind of parent that you would want to use to select the component you're creating, or there's going to be some kind of global class. So as far as the return inside of the wrapper, well, I'm going to go with link first for my cart, remember, because the link was to the cart page. So I'm going to go with cart, and I do need to add a class name, and I'm looking for cart-btn. And eventually, once I click it, I will close the sidebar. So why we're setting this up? Well, because if we take a look at the final project, and if I make this smaller, what I would want is the moment I click on any of these links, I would want to close the sidebar, correct? That would make sense. Otherwise, if I click this and if I don't close it, well, technically I'm going to navigate to that separate page, but I mean, it's not going to make any sense since sidebar is going to take up my whole view anyway. Okay, hopefully that is clear. That's why once we click, we will close the sidebar. Now, of course, at the moment we don't have that functionality, so we'll just leave it the way it is, but eventually I'm telling you that we'll close the sidebar as well. So I'm going to go with my cart, and then this is going to be somewhat more complicated because I do want to display my little cart text as well as the icon and then the totals. And in order to set it up as far as CSS, I went with span. Then for the span, we added a cart container class. And inside of it, we went with a icon first. So FA and then shopping cart, like so. And then inside of the span, we went with another span. And this one was class name of cart, hyphen, and then value. And again, eventually this will be dynamic. This will be coming from cart context, but For now, let's just hard code this value as 12. Let's save it. And as far as the button, eventually there's going to be, and by the way, let me check it out on a big screen. There it is. This is something we should see. And back to the button for the login. Eventually, there's going to be a ternary operator where I'm going to check if we have logged in. I'm going to display one button with one text, and then whether that's icon of minus or plus. But for now, again, we don't have the user, so we might as well just go with the button, and I'll place it right after the link, and we're going to go with type. And by the way, for some reason, this didn't work. So button, then type. It is going to be button, of course. So button here. And let's add a class name of auth and then hyphen btn. Again, there's going to be on click functionality later, but inside of this button, let's just say login and some kind of icon. In this case, I think I'm going to go with plus. So let's type login and then FA user and then not minus, we'll say plus. That was also something that I was struggling. I couldn't come up with whether I should place a minus or a plus. So I was going back and forth, and I just went with this setup. If you don't like it, if you want to switch it around, that is totally up to you. So we have the cart buttons, at least the initial setup. So I think we can go with footer because it's going to be somewhat easier. And then we'll swing back to the sidebar. And then once we set up the sidebar, then eventually we'll have to set up the functionality where once we click on the button, then of course we can see the sidebar. And once we close it, of course, the sidebar will be hidden.